Welcome to another edition of Very Vogue with me, Val Kleinhans. Very excited for today's guest because she teaches us how to look good in photos on the gram because that's a priority today. Christine Busan is in the building. Christine, you are here because you're very Vogue. Thank you for your tips. I'm so excited you're here.
Thank you. I love that. Such a great intro. I appreciate that. I'm really happy to be here too.
It's the truth. We want to know how to do this. As dumb as it sounds, social media is becoming more and more a part of our life. We're using it for a variety of reasons because it's fun or for our business. So this is a skill set that we're kind of big. At what point did you realize that you've got this set of skills, you have the know-how when it comes to looking good in photos that you could provide, and you were ready to share this?
Yeah, so it's really interesting. There's always that cliche that kind of every single thing you do in life, even if it isn't your favorite, is like a stepping stone that kind of teaches you something that you take to the next level. And when I look back at kind of the trajectory that my career took, it all kind of has lined up to this. I went to college. And then my senior year, I was in Seattle for college. I went to University of Washington. My senior year, I knew I wanted to intern for a magazine. I had this dream ever since I was like 12 years old that, I was going to work in magazines and no one could tell me otherwise. That's what I was going to do. I had no connections. I was living on the West Coast, but that didn't matter. So I knew that senior year I'd need to do, some kind of like 6-month internship program. So, I applied for like, way too early, like straight, and got rejected a ton. And then finally, I was offered an internship with Marie Claire. So I packed up, moved to New York, and, in addition to kind of like tracking the samples, one of my responsibilities was attending on photo shoots. Like if you did a good job, that was kind of like a reward that they let you do. And so I was fortunate that some of the stylists would frequently ask for me as their like assist because, they liked working with me. So I got to assist for, just editorial as well as like celebrity photo shoots and stuff like that. And when I was on the set, I'd really see, how models and celebrities, they'd appear one way in person, but then they could really transform into something entirely different in front of the camera. And around that time, it became very clear that print journalism was dying and you needed to have a blog if you wanted to kind of be seen within, the journalism community or the fashion community or anything like that. So, I started my blog, which was called Madam Ostrich, and that's kind of how we met, and everything was all about fashion, feminism, and rock and roll. And I'd kind of write about different topics that I liked. And at the time, once my internship was done, I continued to work for different PR and like fashion houses and things like that. And my job was always assisting on these photo shoots. So I'd take every single thing that I learned from these photo shoots and I'd apply them to being in front of the camera for my blog. And everything was all fine and dandy from about like 2011 through 2014 when I changed my medication and I ended up gaining like 70 pounds in the matter of like a year and a half. And so I was faced with this really interesting conundrum that I did not know how to dress my plus size body. I did not know how to pose in my plus size body. And I had kind of a sense of, dysmorphia in just a very kind of like, definition sense, rather than like a psychology sense of when I saw myself, I couldn't really relate to myself in the same way that I could in the body that I had been in for so long. So, at that point, I discovered kind of the plus size fashion community in New York City. And so many of those, amazing bloggers and creators are still my friends to this day. And I figured out how to dress myself. And then I took kind of everything I'd learned being on those shoots and had to reverse engineer how to do them for my new body. Because what I'd learned about positioning my body in one way didn't necessarily translate the same way in my other body. So I became really kind of obsessed with, at that point, like in 2014, learning every single thing there was to know about posing and figuring that out. And fortunately, I didn't quit blogging. I continued blogging and creating and everything and continued studying as well. And now we kind of are where we are. So that's the long version of it.
No, that's perfect. You can't be too long on a podcast.
Okay.
You can't be too long on a podcast. This is great. Well, I have so many follow-up questions.
Of
Firstly,
course.
you mentioned briefly that, Marie Claire kind of presented those opportunities to visit those sets as like a little treat.
Mhm.
When you were doing well. what does Marie Claire define as doing well? Like, what is it that they wanted to see from their hires?
Um, so I was it was interesting because that was back before the lawsuit that Hearst had. So we were all there was like 15 of us unpaid interns. And I mean, I don't want to say too much, but Marie Claire was great as an environment, like work wise. It wasn't like the Devil Wears Prada, but some of those girls I was interning with were ruthless. Like they'd do things like an editor, because back then, it was a very interesting time because now everything is digital. My friends who work in magazines, everything's handled digitally. Whereas back then it was a mix of both, where it'd be like, go to style.com, print out all the runway looks from Dennis Basso, put them on a corkboard and order. So like, I remember just very particularly, that was like one of my responsibilities for one of the editors was to grab all the Dennis Basso looks, because we were doing an interesting like red story for fall, winter 2012 or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And so I laid them all out in order and cut them all out from style.com, printed them, put them out. I remember this one girl, Haley, I'm on to you. I think she moved back to like Iowa or something, completely rearranged the order of my board. Yeah.
The audacity.
I know. So Haley, if you're listening, but so it was,
we don't know you. We don't know
it
you.
was things, in terms of like doing a good job. It's just things like I think just being helpful.
Okay.
And kind of like, being helpful, doing things you aren't asked for, but still not creating more work for everyone else. Because it's like, like notoriously fashion editors, overworked, underpaid, like just, it's a behemoth of work, and that's why they really needed like that intern team. But that was, I guess, kind of how you like gauge doing a good job and everything. So
if they could trust you and if they could rely on you, it sounds
exactly. Like. Yeah. And also things like, I guess not getting starstruck, like, because we did have, some cover celebs and stuff like that. And so not, you wouldn't like be like, oh my God, can I like hug you, that kind of thing. So, and also it's really long photo shoot days. Like I remember one of our photo shoots, call time was at 6 a.m. So of course I got there at like 5:45, didn't end up leaving till 1:15 in the morning, so unpaid.
Oh, but
Yeah.
that speaks to the effort that, going into photography takes. It does take a lot. And
Yeah,
you brought up something that I never even occurred to me before, that as your body changes, your posing should change along with it. Because
exactly.
quite literally your shape has changed.
Has changed. Yeah.
So,
And it's about just kind of figuring out, what you want to put to the forefront, what you want to minimize, because that's really all it is. It's just exaggerating and minimizing different aspects of what you do by getting them closer to the camera or farther away. So it's, it's definitely something that, especially a lot of women too, or pregnant individuals will reach out to me and be like, okay, I don't know how to pose now that I'm pregnant, just because they've never had that shape before. And it's a very, pregnancy is a very unique shape. So that's kind of a whole like learning curve as well too. So there's our bodies are fluid. They're meant to change over time. And with that, the same way that, we change makeup trends or fashion trends, posing trends change too.
yeah. Well, so right now you're sitting at just over 300,000 followers. Firstly,
Yeah.
congratulations.
Thank you.
Secondly, what's your social media journey been like? Like, what
Yeah.
helped take it to social media?
So I started Instagram in 2010. I think it was December 2010. My first Instagram was a picture of a sunset. I was working at Full Picture PR at the time in
Oh,
Flatiron District in New York. And it was, of the window, basically with this view of the Empire State Building. Shot
oh.
it in the Instagram app. So like in the
Yes, I
camera,
remember.
like back in the day,
Yeah.
did X Pro or Lo-Fi, I'm sure, because like that was like the scene era and like it had like a chokehold on me. And that was my first Instagram. And then back then, I started blogging in 2011. Like we did blogging.
Yes.
The Instagram crossover didn't really happen until late 2012, early 2013, in terms of like, head over to the link in my bio and check out my blog, and that's really what it was. Like we used Instagram back then as a means to get people on our blogs. And that kind of kept up really until about 2014, I'd say. And then 2013, 2014, it became like you made money through
The
Instagram.
reverse.
Yeah. So, I mean, that happened a bit earlier too, but a lot of it, we were still like really blogging. So, I, started off kind of just sharing different things. I remember it was the most fun time I'd say of Instagram was 2013 when you just shit post like every and anything. It'd be like, this is my coffee. I'd literally like take a picture of you through like right now, like, look, I'm on a Zoom call, like, like I think
This is my dog.
Literally, I have, I think 3,000 posts or something like that on Instagram. I'd say about 1,500 of those are just from 2013. Like, because we literally share everything.
There were no rules.
It was the chronological algorithm, and you were just like, it was so much fun just, share before we kind of went super curated. But, so I did that, and I didn't really get like serious, I'd say, at Instagram until about like 2017. That's when I started, posting a lot more and stuff like that. So I was kind of like a late bloomer in that sense. And then I really hung out, I think around 2017, I was like 55K. I was hanging out at like 55K, give or take, until I'd say last year. That's on Instagram. So with TikTok, which has been kind of a whole other journey, it was funny. It took me over 10 years to hit 100K on Instagram. It took me 13 months to hit 1 million followers on TikTok.
What do you think the difference was?
It's just such a, so basically 2020, I downloaded the TikTok app because Trump was going to get rid of it. So my dad, he's gonna be 75 this year, that was like 3 years ago, 72, whatever, he's like, let's download it and see what it's all about, so like we was to the pandemic, I was at home with my parents, Bert and Janet, and we're like, okay, we're gonna download TikTok. And we're like, within like a week, we're like, this is really cool. Like my dad's like, the app actually listens to me, which is really interesting, whereas Instagram is better now, but he'd get things that he just wasn't interested in on Instagram because they're like, okay, you're a 72-year-old man, this is what we're going to give you. And that just wasn't what he wanted. Whereas he found really quickly, like, my dad, who's not super tech savvy on TikTok, you get content that you're actually interested in and it keeps you on there. So I think that was a big part of it. I didn't actually start really posting on TikTok until November 2021 because my dad is like, why aren't you on TikTok? Like, why do they have so many more followers than you on Instagram? And I'm like, oh, because they're on TikTok. And he's like, well, why aren't you on TikTok? And I'm like, that's a good question. So, I started really like posting on TikTok November 2021. And then I hit 1 million followers in January, I think it was 17th, 2023. Was that this year? Yeah, it was this. No, wait, I'm confused. I don't remember when it was. It was December. It was 13 months after November. So it was December. Yeah. December 2022. Yeah. Sorry. I'm like all over the place. So, I think it's just because the algorithm is set up to give people what they want. And I think a lot of creators now, it's very oversaturated, which is, good and fine and expected, but there is a significant kind of learning gap between video, especially TikTok style video, than content creation as we knew it. So that was why I didn't post from April 2020 or May or whenever that was until December 2020 or November 2021, was because I was like, oh, I don't know, can I do this? Can I not? That kind of thing. But in retrospect, I don't really have any regrets, but I do wish I would have started earlier because, that would have, the growth was like explosive back then because so many people were signing up and there were, less people making content. And now it's interesting because TikTok is actually at a point where there's more people making content than ever, but the viewership has gone down. So that's why a lot of people are complaining that like their TikToks aren't working. And it's like, it's just a supply and demand issue, more than anything. So I was very roundabout. I'm like rambling about it, but that's been my social media journey. And so to rewind, then I had a big feature last August with Buzzfeed. They did like this profile piece on me. It was supposed to be just a small piece, but then the author Shelby, the journalist Shelby, ended up making it like a profile piece, which was really cool. And it was crazy because it trended as #1. It was like the #1 article on Buzzfeed until Khloe Kardashian had her baby, which was really interesting. And from there, I grew in one day 20,000 followers on Instagram. And it was really that BuzzFeed article kind of just setting, and then I don't know what happened. The algorithm just kind of set in motion. And I went from hanging out about 55,000 followers in 2021 to like 300,000 today. So that's kind of just how it all happened.
That is incredible. And
Yeah.
you brought up a good point about, how we use these platforms has changed.
Mhm.
Kind of along with how we take photos of ourselves as our bodies change. One of
Yeah.
the reels that you did was the one comparing Gen Z and millennials and how they take their photos. I loved it because I was like, oh, she's born in 1989. I'm 1990. This is cool. This makes sense. And then
Yeah.
the more I watched, the more I saw that it wasn't really, you're not really shitting on Gen Z or millennials
Or
either.
millennials, no.
No, what you're saying is it takes experimentation to be successful
Yeah.
at any of it, no matter what age you are. When did you figure that out, and when did you get comfortable experimenting on your own?
So it's interesting because I made a video kind of on like the 3 millennial posing trends to stop doing. I think that was summer of last year, I want to say. And with that, I got, my first Good Morning America feature, and then I had the Access Hollywood feature, and that's what led to the BuzzFeed feature.
Okay.
It's funny because it's kind of like I'm going to answer like another question that wasn't asked too, like a politician, and then I'll answer the next one. But people, there is the whole like millennial versus Gen Z thing, and people are like, oh, it's such a tired narrative. But I'm like, it's not about, no one generation is more right than another. There's no right or wrong way to do things. But I think it is important to analyze how things change. It's the same as like looking, at history in motion. And it's kind of like the easiest way to look at and analyze just generationally how we do different things. Like it's not a matter of comparison. It's more so like just a matter of like discourse, especially because technology is a rapidly evolving and constantly moving, just industry, especially with the introduction of AI and everything else. And it's been really interesting, kind of the pushback that I've gotten against those videos, because some people are so like set in their ways. And I'm like, why? Like there's nothing wrong with things. And I'm not saying you have to be trendy Wendy. You can pick and choose what you want to do. But I always think it's so, ever since I was little, I've always been one of those people like, and my dad is kind of the same way with his like early adoption of TikTok. And my grandpa's always, he's gonna be 90, and he's always super into tech and everything changing and keeping up with things. So I don't know. I've always just thought tech is so interesting, and the intersection of kind of like tech and society and how it all comes together. So that's kind of my background as to why I'm always experimenting with, tech and things like that. And just in terms of experimenting with photos, I have always really been into photography ever since I was very little. Like I think I mentioned in that video that you're referencing, like I figured out very young how to load in the film and where the film was kept. And then my mom would be like, why is there 8,000 pictures of the back of a kid's head at Disneyland? Things like that. Like, so kind of almost like getting in trouble for it. And I wanted a digital camera. That was what back when they were $1,000 in 2000, I had to wait until they got cheaper, but that's what I wanted. And the second I could, I had access to DSLRs. I kind of just ran with it. So it's always been something that I've, been interested in. And then having iPhones, I mean, it gave you the ability to just share nonstop. So that's why I, posted 1,500 times in 1 year on Instagram. So I think it's just like a personality thing and a curiosity, and just I've never been someone who has artistic talents. I've always loved art. I love music, but I'm not, music. I have a good ear for that, and I guess a good like taste for that, but I don't play any instruments, so I don't paint, I don't, can't sew, can barely draw a straight line. So photography has always just kind of been the medium that I've chosen, that I've always really enjoyed and been interested in. And again, it's kind of the intersection of sociology, because you're photographing other people, tech, and then also art. So
Yeah, and coming from an environment that supported those choices and was welcoming to begin with in your family. You know,
Yeah.
they're encouraging you, hey, try this, look at this. You know, they never said don't experiment, which is super, super helpful. So you come
Yeah,
from
and that comes with a tremendous amount of privilege and
well,
access and privilege. So
that you seem to be aware of that, because when I look at what you do, you don't just post for the girlies, you post for the boys, and you post for anybody that's androgynous as well. And you teach
yeah.
all of these people
I
how
try to avoid cis het men though. They're mean. Like they are mean. So I want to eventually, expand to look good in photos men, but hopefully I'll have a masculine counterpart that will
Mm.
lead that, because they're just, especially on TikTok, they're just like they come in, they mansplain everything, they're rude, they make sexual comment, like I hate them.
Always, they're always doing the
Yeah.
most.
So as you know, if you're respectful, you can stay. But yeah.
If you can't, boy, bye.
Yeah.
We don't need it. But I got that vibe from you, and it seemed to me like that was something important to you. The being able to reach anybody, pretty much.
Yeah, I think it's really important that, because I focus on feminine posing just because you can only do what you can do. Like if I live in Fullerton, California, which, like, I mean, it feels very small towny. It's in Orange County, but like I don't really know any creators here, and the ones that are creators tend to kind of be very like mommy bloggy, which I already fit that very feminine bill. So, I eventually it is on my radar to definitely expand and hopefully, meet up with other creators that have different body shapes, different identities, like different means of presentation, because there's so much more than just to posing than just be posing like, you're a supermodel or something like that. Yeah. So
Yeah.
that's definitely something I'm actively looking to expand upon.
She said, "This is an empire. Get ready." That we're
Yeah.
She did. um, what is next for you? What are you looking forward to? What can we look forward to seeing?
Yeah, so basically, really I'm going on tour with Thievery Corporation for fun. That's like my vacation. So I leave, we're going to Bottle Rock, and we're doing it's like a few shows, San Francisco, Bottle Rock, that kind of thing, which is going to be really fun. So I'm going to take out my brain starting on Monday, just unplug it basically. Maybe I'll make like some TikToks and some Instagrams. And then once I get back from that, I've been getting a lot of private, like one-on-one posing requests, relaunching my Post Perfect course. So I changed it from just being like a course, which is how it launched in 2020, to being like a year-long interactive thing. Because the problem I was finding was people don't need a posing course. You don't need me to sit here and teach you how to pose because you're going to forget it later. So I like sat back since for like 3 years and developed, like this kind of methodology of like, okay, we're going to break it down week by week. You're going to build muscle memory. You're going to turn in your homework. And yeah, it's going to take a year, but like, honestly, a really strong habit takes like 260 days to develop. So that's like what's going to happen. So Post Perfect is relaunching. I shot the couples posing guide with my friend James back in March of last year, and I need to like get around to editing. I need help. Help is in a team, and maybe mental help too. But so that's happening, and it's just I'm a one woman band, which is the hard thing. Like a lot of kind of the people that my contemporaries with the industry, like they have teams and stuff like that, so they're able to churn out things a lot faster. So for me, most days it's 6:30 a.m. until like 11:30 p.m. and then bed and then do it again. So
Doing the work, putting in the
yeah.
time. I can relate. I mean, I'm a one man band at this point too.
Yeah.
All my podcasting, I do it on my own. I edit it myself. I publish it myself. I design the graphics for it myself, and I shoot
And
my.
your graphics are really good too. How do you did you get like a designer to kind of do how did you do that?
Me.
It looks really good.
Me. I just know what I like, and I it depend. I'm very conscious of a vibe. Like
Yeah, it suits you really well. I really like it.
yeah, I wanted it to sort of reflect me as the person. I mean, I started out just like you were talking about with the blog.
Mhm.
And then it was like, skirt, we're not really doing the blog thing so much, or at least we're reversing how we use it, where, we're not we're using the blog to get it to our other social channels because that
Yeah.
is what's out in the forefront. So as soon as I made that decision, I changed up the name. I wanted it to be more personal. I wanted it to be everybody could get to know me. Uh,
Mhm.
so the only way to do that, in my opinion, is to do 90% of it at least yourself. It's nice to have,
Yeah.
but I go out with my tripod and sometimes I
Mhm.
suck at my first few takes, but I keep playing with it and turning different angles and hitting a low angle with it and raising it and seeing if I like this way or it all takes experimentation. And if you haven't a vision beforehand, 9 times out of 10 you'll hit what it is you're looking for.
Yeah. And it's funny you brought up like the tripod thing because I'm to the point now where a lot of the times I'll do 8 billion things and I'll end up picking the first one that I did right
I
off the
know, I
gate,
hate
because
that.
like,
I hate that. I'm like, I wasted that hour.
yeah.
But
But in the first one, the one that you intuitively, like the most ends up being the one that you pick, which is really funny. Have you thought about expanding to like short form video or anything like that?
a little bit here and
I
there.
think you should because you're like me. We're like personality people, you
Yeah,
know?
a
I
little.
think that was a big thing too with my, because I've never been an aesthetic girly. Like I am, I have style and I have things that I like, but I'm such like a heady, like I live in my brain and I'm like silly and goofy at the same time. So it's like for me, I think that video really gave me the ability to be myself in a way that ironically photos didn't, like
Got it.
um so I've really enjoyed it. But I mean, because you're great on camera, you're very good at speaking and everything.
Thanks. No, I try. I mean, sometimes I suck with coming up with ideas to turning it into short form too. I mean,
Yeah.
fuck, I'm not afraid of experimenting with it. I'll put it that way, which I really
Mhm.
the first big hurdle most people still have to get through is getting over the fear of just doing it. I like doing reels. I like doing certain TikToks, but particularly with TikTok, I'm like, what is it that people are looking for? What is it that is going to help, me stand out amongst the millions of people that are on this? I don't know,
Yeah.
but I don't know that I've sat down and asked myself those questions long enough to really come up with those answers as it applies to me or my brand. But the reels, I'm loving doing a be real series where I just shoot the shit and be real about whatever it is it's on.
Yeah.
And I want to do more of that on Instagram. I want to play with it. I do want to play with short form video more, but photos are fun too. It's all fun. Do it all.
I love taking photos for fun. That's like photos are more fun to me than videos are. Like I have more fun
Yeah.
doing photos than videos. Um because with videos there's a pressure, especially timing wise, like every 2 seconds gotta keep it moving, like, and
Yeah.
which is a challenge, which is fun in itself. But I love just like setting up the tripod, doing things myself, taking my time, waiting and figuring out the lighting, like there's a very specific joy for me that, and it's very kind of meditative for me, and I really, really enjoy
Yeah.
that. Yeah,
Me too. And it's better for me. It's easier to edit a photo than it is to edit a video too. And
definitely.
that's another challenge that I would like to spend time when I'm not doing all the things. Just to sit
Yeah.
really like pay attention to how can I get a transition like that? How do I edit this my own way? And what does that look like? And how do I do that in the form of TikTok versus Instagram? Because there is a difference between the two. Some things are more successful on one than the other.
And
And
the other, exactly. Like transitions are out on TikTok, like whereas, Instagram, it's still, and it's interesting too how even YouTube shorts entering the chat, each three has its own like different
ooh,
culture around it. Cause like I just create for TikTok, I repost it everywhere.
yeah,
And but I'm informational, so it's like either the information is needed or like it's like solution based or it's not, like, but just in terms of what the YouTube shorts algorithm like pushes out is very peculiar because things that don't do well on Instagram and don't do the best on TikTok, well, and doing really well on YouTube shorts. So there's no like rhyme or reason, like there's no like secret sauce to virality across every single platform. It is kind of what it is.
yeah. So just
Yeah.
experiment and have fun. That is what I learned today with you, Christine. No, I really do. I so appreciate your time. Thank you for your wisdom
Yeah.
and for being here. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you for having me. I'll talk to you later.